Hi, everybody. I'm Maria Strashinsky. I'm an executive editor at Wired. I'm going to babble for just 1 second. I think the reason I'm here is a few years ago, and I don't write very much. I'm an editor. I have a team of other people who do that. But I got really, really interested after I heard Jamie Beard speak at TED. And I couldn't get the idea out of my mind about geothermal and the oil and gas industry. And so Jamie, being Jamie, convinced me to go to Texas and write a story. So I wrote a cover story about the promises and potentials of geothermal, and I met Cindy in Texas, so she shows up in the story. And what's really interesting to me now is, side note, people think because I'm an editor at a technology magazine, that means that us editors at Wired know a lot about technology and science, and the dirty little secret is that we're just a bunch of lit majors who know how to ask a lot of questions. So that's what I'm here for. But because of that little background in geothermal and because of my background at Wired, do know a little bit about technology, this partnership became really, really interesting to me. Since I did the reporting, it feels like in a world that I know moves slowly, a lot has happened. And so I wanted to talk about this Sage and Meta partnership. And actually, Cindy, I'm going to let you introduce yourself first. Her name is up there. Her title is up there. Cindy Taft, CEO of Sage. But go ahead and introduce yourself and tell folks your story.
You bet. So good afternoon. My name is Cindy Taft. I'm the CEO of Sage Geosystems. So my background is actually oil and gas. We founded Sage about 4 years ago with the focus on being geothermal. We got to the field very quickly after we got our funding, and we did some testing, and we actually recognized that we had a perfectly good energy storage solution. So we're now advancing 2 business lines, one being energy storage, which is very much like pumped hydro, except rather than having a lake up a mountain, we've got one of our lakes is deep in the earth. And we use those same technologies, so the fracking technology and the way we operate the fracture, to also do geothermal. So for geothermal, now you drill that well deeper into hot rock, and you're accessing not only the pressure energy of the water, but you're going to be able to use the heat as well, and so the surface equipment is going to be a little bit different. So we're actually going to be commissioning our first energy storage facility in December of this year, just south of San Antonio, and we're very excited about that, and of course, very excited to be working with Meta as well for geothermal.
Chris, why don't you give a little bit of a rundown on your background and how you ended up doing this, and then how you ended up finding Sage.
Yeah, it's great to be here talking about this partnership with Sage. We're excited to be working with such great experts in the geothermal space. Obviously, it's an area that we are less familiar with in terms of having the deep domain expertise that the Sage team brings to the table. But Meta knows energy really well. We've had a long commitment to bringing renewable energy resources to support our data center operations. We've got over 12 gigawatts of renewable energy contracted today. We have over 8 gigawatts of renewable energy in operation today. All of that supporting our data center operations. We match since 2020, we've matched 100% of our data center energy consumption with renewable energy. And so this is another way for us to further diversify our renewable energy portfolio and ensure that we're bringing the right types of resources to the grid to support those operations. So, I joined Meta a couple of years ago, and a large part of my role is really looking at these new innovative technologies that we can help commercialize and figure out how we can seed these technologies in a way today that will enable them to show up at scale in the 2030s as we're seeing more and more energy demand over time. And so as we went out and looked at technologies that were of interest that could really be impactful for us meeting our future renewable energy needs, geothermal certainly emerged as one of the leading areas that we wanted to make sure we were helping to seed commercial activity in. And as we scanned that landscape for companies that we thought had solutions that could be delivered in the near term, be delivered in a way that was safe, clean, affordable, and reliable, Sage certainly rose to the top of the list, and they've been a great partner with us as we've moved this project forward together.
Can, two things. One is, and I think the folks right ahead of us did a lovely job of establishing where we are, right? Like, we have seen growth and a huge investment and interest in renewable energies and in geothermal in the last few years. We've also seen the rapid advancements of technologies, including, of course, generative AI, and the rapid scale of what that's going to need. Again, like, I know the people right ahead of us talked about this, but I was wondering, Chris, if you could talk a little bit just from a broad perspective of, let's just talk about the needs of technology, and then I'd love to hear a little bit about specifically what you guys can say about what you're agreeing, like what your partnership can look like.
Yeah, certainly we see the need for energy continuing to grow, right? With AI and with data centers, the need to continue to find clean, reliable energy to support those activities is imperative. It's not just data centers that are growing the demand for energy as well, though. It's, we see industrial loads, we see electrification of industries like transportation and building, heating and cooling as also being ways that the grid just needs to continue to grow over time. And so we really need to make sure we have a full portfolio of resources that are available to help us meet those needs for the country as a whole. And with geothermal, this is an exciting technology because it not only meets those renewable energy objectives, but it does it in a way that's firm and reliable. And so we want to make sure that we're partnering closely with companies that can help to advance quickly and get to scale quickly the amount of geothermal that's available for companies like Meta to transact with over time. And so the partnership with Sage is really focused on that, right? It's doing this at a scale where we can demonstrate that the technology works, that it works in a basin outside of the areas where geothermal has been typically developed to date, and then to scale that as quickly as we can and make sure that we're bringing geothermal at scale in a wider geographic footprint and at the right type of price point that will enable companies like us to transact at scale.
Cindy, can you talk a little bit about that? This idea of needing to scale, supplying what a company like Meta, the data centers, how much can you say about what this ideally, like in the dream world, would look like?
Well, I mean, we're at a very exciting time that Chris is explaining. I mean, I think the electricity demand projections are saying that we need at least double by 2050. And if you look at the part of the curve that renewables is providing, you need 8 times the renewables between now and 2050. And that doesn't even take into account the energy demand that Chris mentioned that AI needs, or even improving the world's living standards. So it's an exciting time for us in that we are not only advancing geothermal baseload, but if you take our energy storage and you pair it with wind and solar have done a great job greening the grid. We just need to help wind and solar. So using our energy storage technologies, we can help also wind and solar green the grid and help meet the demand needs. Right now, data centers are looking at geothermal, but I think, in the future, there could be some application of intermittent paired with storage.
You mentioned that the idea of this project is to be in a place where we haven't seen geothermal, is it right to say proved or tried yet, but I know you don't want to, we can't say much yet about
location?
Where.
Yeah.
But can you talk a little bit about that idea that you're going into a new place? And what does that mean for you?
No, absolutely. So when we worked the term sheet with Meta was very positive about going east of the Rockies. So we have not landed a location yet because we're still looking at the geology, the grid interconnection, and some of the needs that Meta has. But in order to, what's exciting about that is we're actually going to be showing that geothermal is possible outside of the Great Basin, which you think about Western U.S. So we're going to be able to show that geothermal has further and broader applicability than where we're seeing it right now, at least in the lower 48. So just to give you guys a high level view at some work that we've done recently, we looked at the lower 48 as far as cut of the pie on what the geothermal opportunities were. We took the heat maps. We took out things like parks and monuments, things that you knew you weren't going to be drilling a well. Then we were looking at, we wouldn't want to drill on the side of a mountain or the side of a valley. And, the remaining geothermal potential in the lower 48 was still 4 terawatts. That's just very huge. So then we backed up and said, okay, well, what if we needed to deliver 5 gigawatts by 2030? Is it possible? So to deliver 5 gigawatts by 2030, which is in about 5 years, we would have to drill about 500 wells a year. That's only leveraging like less than 5% of the oil and gas industry. The oil and gas industry drills 20 to 30,000 wells per year. So the geothermal potential's there. We just need to get out there and actually just go after it.
This pivots me into, I'm going to come back around to a few things, but this idea of drilling and this idea of can geothermal scale, I mean, it's sort of the big question, or one of the big questions here. And you brought up how few wells you'd need to drill, but I'm going to bring up the F word, which is there going to be sort of political problems getting over the idea of fracking? Cindy, I know you've done a lot of testing. I think we should just talk about that elephant in the room, because I know that can be tough on a big public company too. So you go.
Absolutely. So yeah, we're very transparent about what we're doing. We're using a heavy fluid to create a crack in the earth. And what that allows us to do is create a huge surface area, which you need for this heat exchange in the earth. But it allows us to create that huge surface area in less than a day. If you try to create that surface area with other techniques, it just takes a lot longer and is very expensive, which then makes geothermal more challenging economically. So we've talked to different regulators. We've talked to regulators in Germany. We've talked to regulators in California. We've told them what we're doing. And they say, well, what you're doing is not called fracking, it's called stimulation. And okay, that's fine. And they say, and by the way, it's okay, but we're still cognizant of the, people are sensitive around fracking. And so we're still very transparent about what we're doing. One of the things that people worry about is inducing earthquakes or tremors. And whether it's with fracking or with the cyclic water pumping that we do. So we take that very serious. The possibility of inducing earthquakes or tremors with our technology is very low, because we have fractures that are connected to the well from which they originate. So we're not connecting two wells with a fracture. So we're using these fractures kind of like a balloon, so to speak, so we know where the volume of the water is going. And so the way induced seismicity happens is when you pump huge volumes of water and you're pumping them across naturally occurring faults, and you lubricate those faults, and then those faults move. And so we're actually staying away from faults, because those faults would take water away from our system and make the system efficiency way too low and probably not even work. But despite that, we do have third parties that install monitoring stations. So right now we're working with the University of Texas. They install monitoring stations around our projects. We monitor for the earthquakes and tremors and make sure that that data is available publicly online. And so we've been doing that at the site that you visited, Maria, for over 3 years, and we haven't seen any kind of tremors or earthquakes. I mean, we detected a tremor in South America, but we didn't have any tremors from our operations.
Do you want to make any comment on that?
Yeah, I think this is part of why we're excited about working with Sage as a partner, is that this thoughtful approach to how you safely and effectively drill in the subsurface of the earth is something that we really respect, and we trust them as the experts to be able to monitor that and do it in a way that's going to be as minimally impactful as it can be. You know, whenever we go develop data centers, that's certainly something that's first and foremost in our mind, is working with the local communities to ensure that we're doing things in a way that, you know, meets the needs and expectations of the community. And so, you know, from what Sage has described, we feel like they're, you know, working in that same type of process where they're trying to do this in partnership with the communities where these projects are going to be deployed.
Sort of sticking to this sticky places that would possibly prevent the scale or slow down the scale. Maybe this isn't the right passageway into this question, but I know that your job has to be looking at a number of technologies.
Yeah.
Obviously, folks have probably heard that Microsoft is looking at reopening 3 Mile Island. Can you talk a little bit about what else, you know, how does this fit in? What are you looking at? Because realistically, if we're like at Geothermal House here, it's like, how do we make sure, and I know we've talked about this already, but how do we make sure geothermal stays in that mix?
Yeah,
Talk
yeah.
a little bit about what else you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're aware of some of the activities that our peers are engaging in, and it's certainly exciting to see you know, everyone trying to figure out how to solve the needs that we have in this energy transition to bring the right types of clean, carbon-free resources to the table. And so we are certainly continuing to explore many options that meet these characteristics that we find attractive, right? We want to find safe, clean, reliable, affordable technologies that can be delivered at scale on the grid. And so as we scan the landscape of technologies, that's where we, you know, prioritize our investments and our support of technologies is those that meet that criteria. And so right now we are really focused on geothermal because we see it as one that really fits that definition very well and is very aligned to our approach. But we continue to look at other technologies as well. And so I would expect us to, again, that we'll deliver a successful project with Sage through this partnership. You know, we may do other geothermal projects to try to accelerate the momentum in this space, and then we'll continue to scan the landscape of other technologies that, you know, may be able to help us be well positioned to meet our energy needs in the future.
What about internationally? Or is Meta looking at, I presume you need energy sources all over the world.
Yeah,
is that in your purview?
It is to a certain degree. Meta's operations are primarily focused here in the US, and so most of our focus is on how do we help accelerate the commercialization of these technologies in this market. But we do have teams that are actively looking at meeting the clean energy needs of other geographies where we have data center footprints.
Yeah. To come back to the US for a minute, Cindy, I know you guys are doing projects with other entities that fit really nicely with geothermal. Can you talk a little bit, because the overall idea here is, right, how do we make sure geothermal can scale in all of this? So can you talk a little bit about the other places that Sage is working that will like help that go, help momentum stay, momentuming?
Yeah, no, I always love talking about the projects that we're working on, and I wish I could show you the pictures. It'd be like showing you my baby pictures. We are building a energy storage facility just south of San Antonio. We're actually mobbing the rig in as we speak today. So this is a 3 megawatt energy storage facility. We're targeting durations of 6 to 10 hours, round trip efficiency of 70 to 75%. This is energy storage. This is what you pair with wind and solar to optimize those assets. And so we're actually locating this energy storage facility on a lignite coal plant. And this coal plant just received funding from the USDA to build 400 megawatts of solar in 2026. So it gives this, it's called San Miguel Electric Co-op. It gives this utility kind of a front row seat to our energy storage so that when they build their solar in 2026, they can evaluate our storage to pair with their solar. One of the other projects is one that Chris Murray actually just mentioned here on the stage about 3 hours ago. So the Air Force has just given us funding to go back to our Starr County well and deepen the well, and then do a geothermal demonstration. So we're going to be doing that in mid-2025, generating electricity with the hopes that once we generate the electricity, the Air Force will then award a power purchase agreement for Ellington Field, which is just outside of Houston.
I want to come back to the demand for energy that's going to come through the technology industry. Tomorrow is MetaConnect, which I don't know if a lot of you know what that is. Probably many of you do. All of the big tech companies have this day, and journalists all show up where they're promoting and showing off and presenting new products. Certainly tomorrow, I'm sure MetaConnect will present all sorts of AI-infused new products. I say this in a roundabout way to get to, like, because all of the big tech companies, or the forward-facing companies do this, product reveals, is there a way, Chris, that other companies might get on board with, or are they getting on board? Is there a you at other tech companies that are looking at things like geothermal? I know fusion gets a lot of attention and money. We talked about small modular units.
Yeah.
Do you get together with a group of you big tech energy folks and talk about how to, make this happen everywhere?
I mean, we certainly engage with our peers in a variety of places, right? We participate in a number of policy discussions, and we participate in things like the Clean Energy Buyers Alliance and other areas where we can figure out how to collectively help move forward some of these new technologies. And so, we're aware of some of those activities that our peers are engaging in, and we applaud all those efforts to advance the prospects of clean energy technologies like geothermal. And we certainly want to make sure we're engaged in doing our part as well, which is why we're moving this partnership forward with Sage, right?
Okay, I want to know, in both of your positions, what it is that worries you most, each of you, and get nerdy. I'm going to ask you to get nerdy on both of these. Like, is there a specific part of the technology, or, Cindy, what worries you most?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's nerdy, but it's grid interconnection timelines if we're connecting to the grid, and it's supply chain. So especially on the electrical equipment side, supply chain for transformers and VFDs is a pretty long lead time, and so we need to get out ahead of those for these projects, so we're not waiting on that equipment. But yeah, it'd be those two things for me.
Chris?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that are, concerning. That the need to move quickly is certainly something we all feel, I think. For me, when we think about the scale at which we've been able to transact on wind and solar projects to date, right? That's the model we want to try to get to as quickly as we can with an industry like geothermal. And so, where I see gaps today is in the ability for there to be an active developer community that is out developing land positions where these types of projects can be deployed. And so the more that we can help bring that kind of credible developer community to the table, that it'll make it easier for us to transact on offtake of geothermal projects at scale. I think with that also comes the kind of project finance that's needed to help catalyze investment in this type of technology as well, right? Right now, there's still a perception that geothermal carries some high-risk profile that I think is maybe a little bit of an outdated perspective, right? I think there's a perception that the risk profile of geothermal has historically been very binary, where you drill a well and you may get nothing out of it. And I think what we're seeing with these advanced geothermal technologies is that there is really more of a gradient that's experienced as you drill these wells, that it's no longer a binary function. It seems to be more of a gradient of outcomes. And so the more we can get data on different fields where wells are being drilled, the more we can back up the idea that these projects aren't as risky as some investors may believe they have been historically, the more we'll see money flow to this sector in a way that will really be catalytic and help it to move forward at scale.
Cindy, do you want to say anything about those perceptions? or-
Yeah, no, Chris is spot on. I mean, so those perceptions are kind of a leftover from conventional geothermal. I mean, let's face it, you know, conventional geothermal is the geothermal that is delivering the 17 gigawatts of geothermal power around the world. However, with conventional geothermal, you are going after the heat, you're going after a huge pool of water just below the surface, you're needing high permeability of the rock, and so the exploration risk is higher to find all of those features, whereas next generation geothermal, not only what we're doing, but other companies, that, you know, you're looking for the heat and you don't need that huge body of water, and in fact we're not looking for that huge body of water, and the formation characteristics are going to be less, you're going to be less particular. So to your point, Chris, I don't think it is a binary risk. We'll drill these wells, we'll produce them, and you know, maybe we target 4 megawatt net output, and instead we get 3.8, or maybe we get 4.3. I mean, so it's going to be not a off and on switch or a binary way of looking at the risk.
Okay, my last question in our last few minutes is, what are you most excited about? And don't say it like broad, like get nerdy. What are you most excited about that you're seeing happen in the, you know, right now in the industry? I mean, y'all can talk about whatever you want, but like in your industry.
Well, I can say for Sage, I mean, we're most excited about the fact that the Department of Defense and Meta is very interested in our technologies. There's this ability and opportunity to be able to scale to 5 gigawatts by 2030. 5 gigawatts, and again, that's only using less than 5% of the oil and gas industry capabilities. So we can do it, and we can do it now. It's just a matter of moving forward. So that's what gets us very excited.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, on a really granular level, you know, we're just excited to see this project come to fruition as quickly as possible, right? We structured this partnership in a way that we could move quickly and agilely. That's the way that, you know, tech companies like to operate, right? Is to try to prove things quickly and then scale them quickly from there. And so we're really excited about the opportunity to do that with Sage, right? This is an exciting, innovative project in the industry, one that we think will be impactful because it's demonstrating this newer version of geothermal technology in a location that it hasn't been demonstrated before. And, you know, we hope that not only yields benefits for Sage as they work to scale, but that will help to catalyze other companies in this space to take those same kind of projects and develop them and prove out additional basins so that we can continue to expand where we can locate data centers and have them be supported by this really renewable, firm resource that we think is going to be transformational in the 2030s and beyond.
Okay, what is the next step in your partnership?
I think the thing that we're most focused on in the really near term is just making sure that we get nailed down on where we're going to locate this project, right? That's the big focus for us, is making sure we put it in the right space where it's going to be impactful, where we have the right subsurface conditions, the right connectivity to the grid, and where it can be, you know, a resource that helps to support our data center operations in a way that's going to be meaningful.
Great. 6 seconds. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.